Across the United States, there are places that were supposed to stay invisible, corridors erased from satellite maps, deserts that listen when no one should be listening, rivers sealed by forces that refuse to explain why. In 2025, these shadows started to move. Zones long forgotten were suddenly reinforced. Agencies that don't officially exist began buying land in regions no one cared about until now. Signals vanished, boundaries shifted, and for the first time in decades, the silence around America's forbidden sectors cracked just enough for something unsettling to escape. Because when the government closes a place without warning, it's rarely the ground they're afraid of. Lock your doors, put on your headphones, because after this video, you'll never see America's restricted zones the same way again. The Nevada Silent Corridor. In the heart of the Nevada Test and Training Range, an expanse already buried under layers of classification, analysts noticed something strange early in 2025. A new shape had appeared on satellite updates, a perfect 22-kilometer rectangle where nothing behaved the way terrain should. Shadows vanished. Tire tracks ended at its borders. The desert floor looked scrubbed clean, as if a vast eraser had crossed the land. At first, the anomaly was blamed on imagery corruption, but when a second satellite from an unrelated company captured the same silent void, specialists realized the distortion wasn't digital, it was real. Independent imagery analysts posted breakdowns online, temperature gradients flattened to impossible uniformity, vegetation signatures disappeared, and the sand reflected light in a way that suggested not a surface, but a coating, thin enough to ignore heat, yet strong enough to hide detail. One expert described the corridor as a radiant blackout, something designed to cloak activity rather than terrain. When coordinates were cross-checked with public land records, a new designation appeared, one no one had seen before: Infrastructure Transient, Sector N4. The term had zero precedent in federal databases. Attempts to trace the acquisition led to a dead end. A shell office inside the Air Force hierarchy registered only to a post office box in Arlington. In late February, pilots training in restricted airspace reported a visual collapse when flying over the corridor. From the cockpit, the ground below looked muted, depthless, as if a flat sheet of color had been pinned across the desert. One pilot said it felt like passing over a hole in the world. Days later, internal memos reminded personnel not to interpret optical anomalies. By March, the corridor began expanding, only a few meters at first, then hundreds. Weather satellites caught nighttime thermal blooms pulsing along its edges, like heat rising from machinery buried beneath the surface. A retired engineer who once worked at Groom Lake claimed the signature resembled subterranean transport rails warming up. No one could confirm it. Then April brought the silence. Communications towers near the corridor began experiencing directional dropouts, brief windows when frequencies simply refused to reflect. The outages formed a pattern pointing straight into the center of the rectangle. It was as if the corridor were absorbing signal rather than blocking it. When a civilian mapping company attempted to release updated satellite tiles, the file was auto-flagged for review. The version re-uploaded hours later showed the entire region blurred into a beige smear. But technicians inside the company reported that their raw data, stored offline, was quietly deleted through an internal command no employee had issued. Whatever is happening inside the Nevada Silent Corridor, no agency has taken responsibility. No press release has been issued. No flight restrictions have been updated. And yet the land continues to widen its boundaries, as though preparing for something that won't stay hidden much longer. Because when a corridor grows without leaving a footprint, it isn't the desert that's changing. It's what's waking beneath it. The Atlantic No-Signal Zone expansion. It began with fishing crews. In early January, vessels off the Carolinas reported something no seasoned captain mistakes. Every form of navigation failed at once. GPS froze. Marine radio dissolved into static. Satellite phones blinked out as if the sky itself had shut. The outages lasted only minutes, but they occurred along a thin, shifting strip of ocean running parallel to the coast, a place with no cables, no bases, no storms, just open water. By late February, commercial cargo ships logged the same phenomenon. The Coast Guard acknowledged the reports but blamed solar interference, even on days of low solar activity. Mariners knew better. Whatever was killing signal wasn't coming from above. It was coming from the water. In March, NOAA updated its maritime hazard charts. For the first time in agency history, a blank region appeared. No depth data, no communication markers, no legend. Just empty blue-labeled temporary anomaly. Independent researchers overlaid the new map with satellite imagery and found something unsettling. The no-signal zone formed a near-perfect ellipse, roughly 1,200 square kilometers, expanding at irregular intervals as if responding to activity deep below. Oceanographers monitoring the region noted faint acoustic disturbances, broadband surges that didn't match submarine traffic or geological events. One scientist described the readings as a structured silence, a void where returning echoes simply failed to come back. It was as if the water column had become an anechoic chamber. Then the Navy stepped in. Beginning in April, reconnaissance aircraft were tracked, flying tight patterns along the anomaly's borders. Satellites captured the wakes of fast-moving vessels entering the ellipse, but none of the ships broadcast identification or appeared on AIS. When journalists pressed for information, Naval Public Affairs released a 6-word statement: temporary federal activity, no safety concerns, but mariners noticed something the Navy didn't mention. Animals were leaving. Dolphins, tuna, and even migratory whales altered their routes, curving far east as if avoiding an invisible wall. Thermal maps showed the anomaly ran colder than surrounding waters, unnatural for spring. Local meteorologists nicknamed it the silent lens, because storms bent subtly around it, as though steered by a force not accounted for in any model. In early May, a privately operated research buoy drifted into the zone after its mooring snapped during rough weather. Its sensors recorded 27 minutes of data before going dark. When it washed ashore days later, technicians found something disturbing. The buoy's internal clock had frozen at the exact moment its transmission cut off, as if time inside its circuitry had stalled. Attempts to retrieve the raw data from the onboard drive failed. The files existed, but every one of them showed nothing but a uniform block of zeros. Data erased not by corruption, but by deliberate overwrite. The buoy had no hardware capable of doing that on its own. The anomaly continues to widen, slowly, steadily, with no explanation offered. No agency has claimed ownership. No studies have been released, and the silence inside the ellipse grows deeper each month, swallowing signal, echo, and certainty alike. Because a zone that kills communication isn't just hiding something, it's preventing anything inside from calling back. But if the ocean can erase every signal we send, what happens when something inside decides to send one of its own? The Black Ridge Acquisition. The high desert along the Colorado-Utah line has always felt unfinished. Miles of red earth that look carved rather than shaped. Mesas split like broken tablets left behind by something ancient. But in February of 2025, locals noticed something new. Federal markers appearing overnight around a vast stretch of badlands no one had ever cared enough to fence. Days later, county records confirmed it. The government had quietly purchased 42,000 acres under an agency name that didn't exist the week before, the Western Atmospheric Management Division. At first, the acquisition drew shrugs. Land trades happen, but the scale and secrecy didn't match routine bureaucracy. The deed listed no physical office, no contact officials, not even a public-facing email. Reporters who tried to trace the signature found only a rented mailbox in Arlington, Virginia, and then the land closures began. By March, rural highways cutting near the region were flanked with fresh barricades. Signs warned of soil instability, though the desert hadn't shifted in centuries. Hikers attempting to enter through old cattle paths reported drones without running lights appearing from nowhere, hovering silently overhead until they retreated. One rancher said a drone followed him back to his truck and stayed there until he drove away. Satellite imagery heightened the mystery. Thermal scans showed narrow ribbons of heat deep in the ground, too linear to be geological, too warm to be natural. Analysts suspected tunneling, though no spoil piles appeared on the surface. Instead, the patterns widened week by week, as if something were moving downward, not outward, carving a grid beneath the earth. In April, a storm knocked out power across a rural service corridor near the restricted zone. When crews arrived to repair the lines, they found a convoy of unmarked trucks idling on the access road, vehicles equipped with ventilation units normally used for underground operations. Workers were told the trucks were environmental response units, but no record of a spill, leak, or hazard was ever filed. Then came the hum. Residents across a 20-mile radius began reporting a deep, sub-bass vibration just after sunset, felt in the ribs more than heard. It rose for several seconds, dipped, then vanished. The pattern repeated every few nights. One homeowner recorded it on his phone. Acousticians who later analyzed the file said the vibration came from far below the surface, too regular to be seismic. By May, military aircraft were spotted circling the region at low altitude under transponder silence. Amateur radio operators detected short, encrypted bursts bouncing off repeaters, signals dense enough to be data packets, yet too fragmented to trace. Someone was talking to something underground. When a Colorado state representative requested federal clarification on the acquisition, the reply came in a single line: "Operations are classified under emergency infrastructure contingency," but no emergency was listed, no declaration filed, nothing to justify 42,000 acres of silence. In June, a satellite captured the clearest anomaly yet. A perfect hexagonal outline, faint but unmistakable, glowing beneath the desert floor at 3 in the morning. The thermal signature lasted less than a minute before vanishing entirely. Locals now avoid the region. Roads once used by campers and hunters end in checkpoints. And the hum still returns on windless nights, rising through the desert as though something below is adjusting, aligning, preparing, because land can be bought for many reasons. But 42,000 acres aren't purchased to hide a problem. They're purchased to contain one. And if the desert is being carved from the inside, and it's only a matter of time before whatever's below reaches the surface. The Red River shutdown. The Red River cuts through the plains like a quiet fault line, muddy, slow, predictable. Nothing about it suggests secrecy. But at dawn on February 2nd, 2025, residents near the riverbanks woke to flashing barricades, federal signage, and armed personnel sealing off a 19-kilometer stretch of land with no warning. The official explanation, geological instability, fell apart almost immediately. The ground wasn't shaking, the river wasn't flooding. Something else had triggered the lockdown. Within days, satellite images showed rows of temporary structures along the banks, sensor towers, mobile command units, and floodlights pointed not at the sky, but at the water. Engineers in hazmat suits were seen lowering cylindrical instruments into the riverbed. One leaked briefing described them as subsurface penetrators, normally used to map underground voids. That raised a bigger question. Why would a calm river require void mapping? Then came the FOIA release. In April, an environmental group obtained a partially redacted document confirming what locals had suspected. Beneath the Red River, sensors had detected a network of hollow geometries, tunnels, chambers and straight-line cavities that no natural process could carve. The shapes were too smooth, too angular. One diagram displayed a perfect 90-degree intersection more than 40 meters underground. The report also mentioned something stranger. The structures were moving, not shifting, not collapsing, moving, very slowly but in measurable increments, as if sections of the underground lattice were adjusting themselves. The document's final readable line referred to non-geologic patterned displacement, a phrase geologists later admitted has no precedent. A week later, every copy of the document was pulled offline. Locals began hearing noises along the restricted banks at night, low metallic groans, pulses that traveled through the ground, and in rare moments, a deep rumble that seemed to vibrate inside the chest rather than the ears. Ranchers reported cattle refusing to graze near the fences, pacing for hours as if something beneath the soil were unsettling them. By May, the shutdown escalated. Helicopters equipped with ground-penetrating radar circled the area daily. Divers entered the river and stayed submerged for hours at a time, escorted by boats with blank hulls. When one diver resurfaced, visibly shaken, witnesses claimed he repeated a single phrase before being rushed into a vehicle. It wasn't empty down there. In June, construction crews erected tall triangular pylons along the west bank, devices resembling seismic stabilizers, except they were oriented horizontally toward the river. A leaked procurement order showed they were classified under Containment Framework Level 6. No one, including former federal contractors, recognized the classification. Then, on a still night in early July, residents miles away felt a sharp tremor, brief, unnatural, like a single impact deep underground. Sensors captured a rapid spike in subsurface pressure beneath the river, followed by an abrupt drop. The next morning, crews reinforced the cordon. Additional lights were installed, and river access was banned indefinitely. Officials maintain the shutdown is temporary, yet the fences grow taller, the pylons multiply, and the ground beneath the Red River continues to shift in patterns that experts say resemble response, not collapse. Because rivers don't hide structures that move, and governments don't seal 19 kilometers of land for erosion, and if something beneath the Red River is pushing back, the surface won't stay quiet for long. The West Desert listening boxes. The Great Salt Lake Desert has always been a place where sound goes to die. Flat horizons, white silence, a dry emptiness that swallows every echo. But in March of 2025, that silence cracked when a group of overland explorers found something scattered across 11 kilometers of barren desert floor. Small black cubes, each one identical, each one placed with a precision no hiker, artist or military exercise had reason to attempt. They weren't markers. There were no serial numbers, no paint, no seams, just matte black surfaces absorbing the Utah sun. The cubes stood about 30 centimeters high and were spaced apart at perfect intervals, as if mapped by an invisible grid. One explorer tried to lift one and recoiled. The surface vibrated faintly, like a subwoofer at the edge of a frequency too low to hear. 2 days later, aerial photographs hit social media. Within hours, analysts noticed something alarming. The cubes formed a long, sweeping arc, a shape that looked less like an installation and more like an antenna array. Amateur radio operators who visited the site brought spectrum analyzers. What they detected wasn't a broadcast. It was a pull, a subtle, constant draw in the ultra-low frequency range, as if the cubes were listening for something specific, something distant. When the story went viral, the boxes vanished. By the next morning, the desert was clean. No tire tracks, no footprints, no sign anything had ever been there. The explorers who posted the original photos arrived to find only shallow impressions in the salt crust, already drying in the heat. But satellite imagery from the night before showed the cubes still present at 02:14 a.m. and gone by 02:21. The removal had taken 7 minutes. 3 weeks later, a document leaked from a Department of Defense contractor. One stamped, sensitive, Echo-class prototype. Inside was a single phrase describing a classified program. Frequency-responsive nodes for detection of anomalous transmissions. No mention of location, no mention of purpose. But the diagram included measurements identical to what hikers had recorded. In May, seismic sensors across western Utah began registering intermittent pulses. Brief, perfectly timed quakes too small to feel, yet too rhythmic to dismiss. The pulses aligned with the precise spacing where the cubes had stood. Whatever had been listening was still imprinting its pattern beneath the desert crust. A physicist at the University of Utah, speaking anonymously, claimed the pulses resembled interference beats, the kind that occur when two signals interact, each adjusting to the other. She suggested the possibility no one wanted to entertain publicly, that the cubes hadn't been searching for a signal. They had already found one. By midsummer, military flights increased over the region, flying grid sweeps in absolute silence, no transponders, no navigation lights. Amateur astronomers reported localized radio dropouts above the desert, as though a cone of interference rose invisible into the night sky. And one hiker recorded something chilling on a handheld mic, a faint, low oscillation, gently rising and falling, like breath filtered through metal. No agency has acknowledged the cubes. No mission has been announced. But deep beneath the desert floor, the pulses continue, steady, measured, patient, because arrays don't listen without reason, and governments don't erase evidence this precisely unless the signal they caught wasn't meant for anyone else. And if the desert was listening, somewhere out there, something may already be answering. The Appalachian Forbidden Sector Renewal. Deep in the Appalachians, where ridgelines fold like sleeping giants and fog clings to the trees as if reluctant to let go, there is a patch of land that has been fenced off since 1952. Locals know it only as the sector, a place where survey markers stop, maps blur, and even hunters refuse to wander. The official reason, unchanged for 73 years, is unstable terrain. But in April of 2025, the mountain's silence broke. New fencing went up. Not the rusted wire of the Cold War, but industrial steel topped with sensors, motion cameras, ground vibration grids. Even the wildlife corridors were sealed. Hikers reported hearing machinery deep within the restricted valley, engines idling, metallic strikes, and the distinct echo of something large being lowered underground. Yet no construction permits were filed. No agency stepped forward to claim responsibility. Satellite imagery made the mystery harder to dismiss. LiDAR surveys, once detailed down to every fallen log, now showed a digital void, a perfect square of missing topography, as though the landscape beneath had been scooped from the data. When cartographers attempted to restore the files from backups, they found the missing sections replaced with placeholder values, not corrupted, removed. In June, an engineer who had worked on Appalachian infrastructure in the 70s came forward anonymously. He claimed the restricted zone housed an abandoned Cold War installation built into the bedrock, one meant to monitor unusual geophysical behavior. His team had been ordered to seal the tunnels when the readings fell out of acceptable range. When asked what that meant, he reportedly said, "The mountain started answering back. That same month, residents living along the perimeter reported tremors, short vertical jolts that rattled windows without disturbing loose soil. Seismographs captured them, but couldn't classify them. The waveform resembled neither quakes nor explosions. The pulses were too fast, too crisp, almost mechanical. Then came the lights. Forestry cameras picked up glows filtering through the canopy at 2 in the morning, soft white radiance rising from the forest floor rather than shining down from the sky. The recordings were pulled within hours. A ranger who reviewed them said the glow wasn't spreading outward. It was breathing, brightening and dimming with irregular rhythm. By late summer, the airspace above the sector was abruptly restricted. Aircraft reported turbulence over the zone on clear days, violent updrafts that forced emergency course corrections. Pilots described the feeling as flying over a mouth exhaling heat. When asked about the renewed lockdown, federal officials responded with a phrase no one had heard in agency vocabulary before: historical infrastructure reactivation. No further explanation, no documents released. The fences remain, the sensors hum. And at night, on the ridge overlooking the Forbidden Valley, some residents swear the ground hums back, steady, patient, as though the mountain is waking from a long unfinished dream. Because places are rarely sealed for what they once were, they're sealed for what they might be becoming. And if the sector has been dormant for 70 years, whatever stirred now won't sleep again. 6 stories, 6 cracks in the quiet surface of a country that pretends it has no secrets left. But the truth is quieter than denial and heavier than silence. Every year the map grows a little darker around the edges. Corridors appear where nothing existed. Rivers shift without warning. Deserts begin to listen. Mountains breathe. And behind every sealed fence, someone decides what the public should never be allowed to see. If you made it this far, thank you. Leave a like. It helps this channel continue uncovering real documented mysteries that rarely reach the light. And if this video stayed with you, there are others waiting. Deep dives into forbidden zones and classified regions scattered across the United States, places where history is erased, access is denied, and silence is the first sign that something is very wrong. Because some territories don't hide danger, they hide intention.